Okay, we are live here. This is Brad Swift. I'm here today. I'm so excited about this first uh, Substack live interview. Actually, it's really just going to be a two-way conversation, but we're excited about it. I'm here with an old-time friend that we kind of lost a connection with, and then reconnected here recently, and we'll probably talk about how that works and why that's an important part of what we're here to explore and talk about. I'm here with Teresa Romain. I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself a little bit in just a moment. Um, where this is part of my ongoing series on One Cause. If you're brand new to me or the Substack or my particular Substack, is called One Cause, and we'll talk more about kind of some of the foundational parts of it itself. But I've been called to explore that, and it was through that project that a friend reconnected me with Teresa, and I'm excited to explore this. We've got some great things that we want to talk about. So, welcome to your first Substack Live as well, Teresa.
Absolutely. And actually I just got on Substack because of this too. So I'm new to Substack world. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks to Tim for reconnecting us after all these years.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure, for sure. And just say a little bit by introduction, about your company, about the work you've been doing for, gosh, it's been what,
More
two
than
over two
28 years.
decades.
More than 28 years, approaching 3 decades now, Brad. It's been a
Wow.
while.
Yeah.
That's a very long story I'll make very short. I have been an abundance coach now for 28 plus years. That entire time, I have also been the poster child for that old saying, you need to teach best you teach best what you most need to learn, and then practice and practice and practice yourself. So I have experienced a lot of scarcity, um, some real, some self-created,
Mm.
especially around money, but not only around money. And I kind of put my journey into like 3 chapters. The first chapter of my business, I made a lot of money. Yay. I worked my blank off and didn't have much of a life outside of my business. Not so yay. Then I said, I don't want to work this hard. So I'm going to simplify, and we're going to live very simply and reduce our budget and cut down our expenses. And then I don't have to make so much money. And for a while, that was lovely because my soul got fed and I could play in the garden and be out in nature. And then there came this point, it was April 25th, 2016, where kind of the illusion of that being okay shattered. And I woke up and I literally felt from the inside that I was a shrunken shell of the person I was meant to be. I literally felt
Mm.
like I was dying from the inside out. And I showed up in tears with my coach, Pat, and I said, and I just cried out, this isn't living, Pat. And that was the day that kind of set me into the third chapter, which was really my using myself and my clients as kind of like a research project as to why is it that the scarcity never goes away? Why is it that
Mm.
a client can get out of debt and be completely debt free and still live in not enough? And why is it that I can have clients who are literally millionaires still living in not enough? Why doesn't the scarcity go away? And I set out on a quest to figure out the answer to that and the solution to that. And that's now the work that I do as an abundance coach and advocate. And it's, I think, why we're so excited to talk today and where our works overlap. So I'll leave them hanging there
Yes,
until we
exactly.
dive into it more.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's again, that's the overlap. That's where in my own conversation with my own coach, who's also a very good friend of both of ours, Tim Banker, he said, I think it's time for you and Teresa to, reach out and connect itself. So we'll get into that connection here. One of the things that we've also talked about in earlier conversations that I want to kind of introduce here to set the tone and the context for this is this whole idea of the butterfly and imaginal cells. And in preparation for this, Um, Earlier today, I went online and actually found a really very insightful article, kind of almost like an essay. But what really struck me, this is by Mark Wynn. It was he wrote this in December of 2015, so that's almost 10 years ago. So he was talking about imaginal selves. I'm going to read a few of the paragraphs here, and then we'll explore this in more depth. He said, imaginal selves are the ones that create the incredible process of metamorphosis that occurs when a caterpillar changes into a butterfly. These cells hold all of the potential for the future, but initially they act separately before combining as one to create something incredible that is a great improvement on their previous existence. The process of this change is amazing. Within the chrysalis, the structure of the caterpillar dissolves into a soupy organic mush.
Yep. Goo.
Hitherto dormant cells, these imaginal cells, from the caterpillar start to develop the new structure of a butterfly, even though there is no similarity whatsoever between, the two creatures itself. Each of these imaginal cells operates as a single cell organism initially, entirely independent of one another. The immune system of the caterpillar even identifies them as threats and attacks them. Regardless, the imaginal cells continue. They multiply and they connect with one another, forming clusters. They start to resonate with the same frequency and communicate in the same language, passing information backwards and forwards until there is a tipping point when when they stop acting as individual separate cells and instead become a multiple celled organism, the butterfly. So welcome to my fellow imaginal self, Teresa Romain,
We've
and
connected. We've connected.
any of the others of you who are watching this live or finding it on Memorex, on the recording itself, welcome to you as well. So let's explore this analogy metaphor a bit more. Um, since kind of reintroduced it to me, there were a couple points that you made that I thought were particularly useful, particularly when we come around the idea of sufficiency and
Yeah.
how the caterpillar starts off being so voracious.
Yeah. A couple of things that I would like to add to what you just said. By the way, that's beautiful. Please send me that link. One is when a caterpillar emerges, it's just an eating machine. It is going to eat everything nearby. I mean, it's just consumption is its middle name. And uh, and that's just part of its process. And in our work of me with abundance and scarcity, you with sufficiency, it gave me a reframe that the fact that we as humanity have been in a consumptive period in our lives, it doesn't make it automatically bad. It just doesn't
Mhm.
make it the destination. That from all of that consumption there arises these imaginal selves, and so something can we can become something more than consumers. We can become something more than a consumption, you know what I mean. Over consuming everything. So that's one thing that I loved about that the consumption stage isn't necessarily bad, it's just not the end game.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I loved when I first heard about the imaginal cells, because it just added so much to a sign that's been on my wall right there for forever. It's a quote from the author Trina Paulus in her book Hope for the Flowers, and it poses a question. A caterpillar in it is posing the question, and I think it's a great question for us to reflect on. And the caterpillar asks, how does one become a butterfly? And the response is, you have to want to fly so much that you're willing to give up being a caterpillar. And I think
Mm,
this moment in history is we're being asked, do we as humans, do we as individuals and as a society, do we want to fly so much, thrive so much, prosper so much, that we're willing to give up being the caterpillar, the consumptive machine, and come together imaginally first, but then in real metamorphosis and give birth to something so much better. And then the piece that I really like when I followed the imaginal cells all the way through to the butterfly, the caterpillar that it originates as is a consumptive, right? Consumption monster.
right.
But the butterfly is a pollinator. The butterfly
Mm,
pollinates so as to fertilize and create more and create food. So we go from something that's consuming for its own interest to something that pollinates, which feeds the butterfly, but also creates life in so many other ways. And I think that's the invitation that we as humans are being called to go from consumers to pollinators.
yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You add an extra dimension to that metaphor, and I think I love stretching metaphors. I don't think you can stretch a metaphor too far, and it really brings up again. In the one cause work that I've been working on, uh, it starts with really identifying what's gotten us here to begin with, and when I say here, in a unsustainable situation, my primary focus has been and probably will continue to be that we are in a climate crisis. It's not on the way, it's here. And if you don't believe it, just here in my beautiful home of the western North Carolina mountains, in the space of 6 months, we've had one of the worst uh, tropical storms slash hurricanes. There was debate as to which it was, but one of the worst in history, not in the last 100 years, but in history. And then, yes, 6 months later, we've had massive fires surrounding us. We thought we were going to have to evacuate our home. We've been here 33 years, never had that before. So the one cause is really, has a primary focus there. It's like what got us there. And again, if you really want to delve into this further, please go to Substack. All of the series, that we've written so far are there. But there's four great, what I call great untruths that have shaped our belief system, which has then shaped our collective actions over the last couple hundred years, which have then resulted in the results that we have, which we're now describing as climate change or the climate crisis. Those are number one, great untruth. Number one is that we are separate, that we are separate from nature and we are separate from each other. Number two is the untruth, the illusion that more is always better. And that's what has led to the whole area of hyper consuming, like the caterpillar. Number three is that don't worry though, because the earth resources are unlimited, but they're not. That's the untruth part of it. And number four is don't worry, tech will save us. So it's completely fine to just dominate and have complete control over the environment and nature because don't worry, our technology will save us. So those are the untruths. Now, as this whole process has evolved for me, what then emerged was how about what truths could lead us out to a new what could be the ideas, the imaginal cell ideas that could lead to our transformation to the butterfly, to a new regenerative future that's not just sustainable but regenerative, where we're actually adding, contributing to life. And I'm going to go through these very quickly, but basically, number one is wait a minute, we are. We are not separate. We are interconnected. We are integral. We are, in fact, nature. And so if we start to grasp that mindset, there's a whole new thing becomes available. So this kind of interconnection, we're interconnected right here, right now. And number two, sufficiency, that there really is enough if we remember how to share. And maybe we'll get into three and four as we go along, but I think I want to pause there because that's really the place where I want us to explore in more depth. And I don't know if this is quite the time here, so you can help direct me if it's not. But I love again, I guess you'd say the metaphor about the game, about the chairs. So why
Sure.
don't you bring us up about that a little bit?
Right. So going back to my journey and the third chapter after that famous "This Isn't Living" moment, and why does the scarcity not go away? It's because the life we've been taught to live, the life we believe we have to live, really, and especially when it comes to our relationship with money and resources and the earth and all that sort of stuff, is very much built on what I now call an archetype of scarcity. It's collective, it's unconscious. We've all inherited it. It's a function of the human dualistic rational mind, and that archetype of scarcity thinks that the solution to not enough is to have more or plenty or lots of enough. So we spend our lives trying to avoid not enough, especially when it comes to money, because that's scarcity. And to get to this point of abundance where we have more or plenty or more than enough, etc. And so we try to do just like I did in my life. We try to make more, make more, make more to get there. Or sometimes we'll try and spend less, but it's ultimately still to get to that abundance where we have more or plenty or more than enough. And that archetype of scarcity, with that definition of abundance, it makes abundance always something separate from us because it's a destination to reach. It's a place to get to that somehow is a function of getting there is based on our actions and our what we do. It also is a function of externals and their quantity. And so then you're into quantity, more, 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 more. And as I started to see this dynamic, both in my life and in the world and the country, I said, oh my gosh, we've set up life like it's a giant game of musical chairs. We're playing a worldwide game of musical chairs. And everybody that I've told that to, it's like we have a visceral response to playing musical chairs because I've really never met anybody who really likes playing musical chairs. There are only two ways you can play musical chairs. You can go, oh my God, I got to get a chair. I got to get a chair. Because, of course, that whole game is built on a premise of scarcity. There aren't enough chairs for everyone. So I got to get in, which is how I used to play the game. I got to get in and I got to push and I got to shove and I got to compete and I got to get my chair. But even if I get my chair, the scarcity doesn't go away because I got to do it again and again. The scarcity never goes away. Or you can be like one of my classmates growing up, and she's like, I hate this game. And she just took herself out of it from the beginning. I don't want to do that competing. I don't want to do that shoving. I hate this game. But then she's kind of sitting out on the sidelines, not really having fun. And as the game continues, there are more and more people without a chair than those with the chair. And ultimately, everybody but one person is out a chair. And it's like, you know, I don't think that's the game we were created to play. I think that's the game we've set up on this false premise of scarcity that science has since proven wrong. There are enough resources. So every man, woman, and child can have a rich and rewarding life. There are enough resources so every person and our planet can thrive. And so I started to say, well, what's the opposite of musical chairs? And it's like, oh, it's a chair for everyone. Oh my gosh. A perfect right sized, custom designed chair for everyone. And it's a totally different game and you play it differently. Now, my competitive types go, well, what's the point of that? And I'm like going, well, think about it. Well, think about it. You got a bunch of people listening to some music, sitting around, dancing around, just doing all the things, and the group gets larger and larger and larger. It sounds like a party to me. And I think that's what we're created to play, because no other sentient being on this planet lives life like it's a giant game of musical chairs. They understand my new definition of abundance is based in the knowing that we're part of something bigger than our individual lives, our individual efforts, our individual perceptions. And that something bigger is refers to like the source of creator of this universe, but it also speaks to the interconnectedness that you talked about, Brad,
Yes.
of all of us and of nature. In the archetype of scarcity, abundance is thought of to be like an individual experience, an individual achievement, an individual project, and and in what I now call the sacred archetype of abundance, which is the blueprint for this universe, we understand the truth that abundance is not a solo sport. It is an interdependent sport. I wouldn't have oxygen to breathe if there weren't plants and green things and trees. If I wasn't exhaling carbon dioxide, the plants and green things would change. None of us would have food to eat if it wasn't for pollinators like bees and butterflies, right? So, like,
Yeah.
everything belongs, but it's meant to work together in service of something bigger than ourselves. Like, again, the butterfly is a pollinator. That's how it gets fed, but it's also how it creates life in the world around us. And so I, for the past few years, have said I'm on a mission to transform the scarcity based ideas of abundance and money that we've inherited. Stop playing a giant game of musical chairs and create a world where there's a chair for everyone, where everyone has the resources they need and they know how to use those resources in ways that supports health and well-being for them, but also for the world around them, because
Yeah.
that's real
Yeah.
abundance.
Yeah. And what I, hearing that is a couple of things. One is, like you said, the sufficiency. The great truth number two is, to expand on that a little bit, is there's enough for everyone when we learn how to share. So
Yes.
that means, yeah, you may have some, again, looking at it from a monetary thing, you might have some savings in the bank, but are you out to accumulate millions and millions or billions of dollars? And for what purpose? You know, because it takes a shift in mindset. I remember back many years ago when I was writing, freelance writing for magazines. I did one article, "Simple Living," I believe, was the article for Yoga Journal, and one of the things I ran across was an interview where they interviewed Ted Turner, who was at that time one of the richest men alive. And the question that was posed to him is, well, when is enough enough? And he said, just a little bit more. And here he was, one of the richest men already, and his answer was just a little bit more. But in that same interview, they asked him later, he said, well, you know, what's it like being one of the richest men in the world? And he really said, he had one of his most authentic moments. He said, you know, it's not really all that great.
Mhm.
So at what point do you start to question, the great untruth that more is always better,
Yeah.
and that we always have to accumulate, accumulate, and accumulate? When does sharing come in? And
Yeah.
the other piece I heard in that was reciprocity. The third great truth is reciprocity, the breathing in and the breathing out.
Hmm.
It's that process of reciprocity. If you try, and anybody who's listening or on the call today, try breathing in and only breathe.
Just so you know, you're breaking up a little, Brad.
That's some point you know that to create these 100%. So,
Yep, and I think you
so
I think, Brad, you should redo that because you broke up for me, at least, through all of that, and what you just demonstrated is something really important. So do you mind redoing that again so people can get the full
sure,
impact of it?
sure. So we're, again, we're kind of going kind of in a dance with the great truths. And the third great truth is reciprocity. And that is, what you were saying before. When I breathe out CO2, the used by the plants. I have a little avocado forest next to me of little plant trees that I've grown from seed. When I breathe out, they get to use my CO2. When they breathe out, I get to use their oxygen. So
Yep.
it's that give and take, that yin and yang. And one of the easiest way to kind of really get present to the difference is try only breathing in.
Yeah. Yeah.
At some point you can't breathe in, so you gotta let go. So it's again the yin and yang of giving and receiving itself.
Yep. Yep. And I'm going to add to that something from my work, um, because in prosperity circles, in the abundance mindset world, etc., there's oftentimes this belief that we have to give in order to receive. And while that's true, we have to give carbon dioxide in order to have room to receive oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
An important shift is to realize, but we don't have anything to give unless we've received. And so
Mm-hmm.
the first movement in life we all took was an inhaling. It was a receiving from something outside of ourselves. And I think until we get that head tilt, we live in a world that thinks, well, I'm a self-made millionaire and I made it myself and I pulled myself up. We have part of the sufficiency and reciprocity and creating a chair for everyone is to go back to the realization that everything we have is gift.
Yeah.
There is nothing we have earned or deserved or made. The foundational principle of our lives is gift. The fact that you and I woke up this morning is gift. Yeah, maybe we eat well, maybe we work out, maybe we get exercise, but there are a bunch of people around the world who did all of those things better than us, and they didn't wake up today. So when we
Yeah.
can return to the fundamental relationship with life as gift, now some gratitude, some humility, some appreciation can enter in. And it's like as we've received gift, we are meant to then be gift and share gift. It's like that's the inherent nature of life is giving. The receiving happens, but if it's I receive to hold on to, it impacts our experience of the gift and it blocks the flow of life. It blocks the flow of resources. It blocks the flow of gift. And that impacts our well-being as well as the world because studies have shown again and again that one of the best creators of joy or the thing that gives people the most joy is actually giving. We
Mm-hmm.
love to give. We love to help other people. We love to share photos of our grandkids, etc. We love to do that. Like we come alive in giving. But
Yeah.
again, we have to recognize that we have nothing to give until we've been given to. And I don't know, but
Yeah.
that has me be more conscious of what I have. It strips away some of my entitlement. It strips away the whole idea that it's mine and I can do whatever I want. You notice how we never, as we're sitting here on the phone, there's nothing that's saying that I'm telling you, oh, Brad, careful, careful. This is my oxygen. Don't breathe any of my oxygen. There's no ownership or possessiveness when it comes to the oxygen that we breathe. Oh, I don't want to take up any of your oxygen, Brad. Like we don't go to ownership, possession, identifying it with it. It's just the oxygen supply that's available to us so that we can receive what we need to live, and we can participate in the ongoing availability of resources. The same is true when it comes to the resource of money and other things, but that's not how it is in a chair for everyone. That's the new possibility. That's the butterfly that we might be able to give birth to. Imaginal cells unite, right? There's a bumper sticker.
Right.
As long as we're
Yeah.
willing to give up, as long as we're willing to give up being the caterpillar.
Yes. Yes. I do want to get a little bit further into the imaginal cell and what happens in that stage where the imaginal cells are not even imaginal cells yet. But I do want to also underline what you're speaking to is, not surprisingly, great truth number 4, stewardship.
Yep.
Stewardship is, where do we get all our gifts from if it's not from the earth? We come from the earth. Even in the Bible, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We arise from the earth. We go back to the earth, and it's the earth that provides us for nutrition, for the oxygen, for our shelter, and so the opportunity is to give back as stewardship. That we are in a collaboration with nature, not in a competition with nature. I had so enjoyed just, yesterday, I have a line between my yard, what used to be a yard, now it's kind of going back to nature intentionally. But I had a line of what I used to think were raspberries. Turn out they're even better. They're wine berries. They're even sweeter
Mm,
and tastier. And they've been given to me for years just on their own. And I realized recently, it's like, if I took really good care of them and cut back on some of the brambles and the other stuff that competing in that area, it could be, quite a collaboration. In fact, as I was doing that, I found a number of small uh, wineberry starter plants, and it's like, I think, I'm going to save some of these, and see if my neighbors and other people in the community might like to start their own. So it's
mm,
that giving and taking and that stewardship shift that um, make it worth getting up in the morning and
yep.
sharing, in that way.
Yep.
And having said that, we want to be conscious through the time here, but I do want to look a little bit about, at some point, the imaginal cells in the uh, caterpillar gets dissolved and becomes, what was the term, mush,
Goo.
goo, gooey mush, organic, soupy organic mush is what Mark Wynn was talking about. Are we going to have to become mushed? Are we going to have a do we need to go through that kind of a collapse before
Uh,
we'll wake up to transformation?
uh, I think yes, both individually and collectively. And here's my take on the individual collapse that I also think is the collective collapse. So going back to that archetype of scarcity, giant game of musical chairs. Um, in the world we live in that game, in the archetype of scarcity, our worth is measured by externals. You know, we're a winner if we get a chair. We're a loser if we don't. We're successful if we make six figures. We're less than successful if we're not. If I have a really nice house, that says something about me. If I have a really crappy house, that doesn't. Part of the archetype of scarcity, it stems from an inaccurate belief we have of ourselves as not enough. That gets shaped. It's part of the human development process. We have experiences and our mind interprets something's wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I don't belong, whatever. And that's real. But then what happens is, to avoid that pain, to not have that be true, we set out to either prove that thing wrong, and we can by accomplishing a lot and getting these achievements and getting these degrees and having all these things, see that proves that I'm not. Or we, good Catholic girl that I am, we go in the opposite direction. Let me live really, really simply and not be materialistic, because then that proves I'm spiritual and loved by God more. We got all this crap around it. And so our identity and how we know ourselves is defined in these parameters of, am I doing a lot? Am I important? Am I doing worthy things? Have I got X followers on Facebook? Whatever it is. And that's a false identity. That's not who we really are. And so I do think that that's the caterpillar version of ourselves. In spiritual traditions, that would be the small self or the false self, as Tom Merton calls it. It's like, yes, that part has to fall apart. It's kind of like the seed shell. Like the shell has to crack and fall apart for the sprout and the plant to emerge and begin to grow. And so I think there is this identification, this proving our worth and value by what we have and what we do and what we accomplish and how much of it and all that sort of stuff, that at an individual and a collective level, yep, that has to fall apart. That has to dissolve for us to discover, embrace, and show up in the world as we really are, which, is human and limited, but yet there's a divine essence that we're innately worthy, we're innately abundant. And when we can really get that, then we're not as tempted to play the consumptive game. We can start to find that point of sufficiency for us, because we're not trying to prove our worth. We're not measuring ourselves by how much we consume or how little we consume, either way. And so I think the same thing needs to happen collectively. And that, like ego death, all of that sort of stuff, yeah, that feels really messy and gooey and mushy, and it's painful at times and it's freeing at times, because it's like, who the hell am I now if I'm not that, and if that isn't who I am, and that's not whatever. But the gift of that is now we get to discover who we really are and who we always have been and who we were created to be. And we can start
Yeah.
to be, in my world, the conduits that we're meant to be, conduits of resources and abundance, like a hose. It's like we're filled, but yet it flows through us. Or I oftentimes think of, like that seed in the ground, it breaks through its shell, it starts to root. Let's say it becomes a sunflower. So a sunflower needs water to grow, no denying it. But that's not, water doesn't make it a sunflower. The
Mhm.
sunflower is already in its DNA. Water just supports it to become what it is. And so the sunflower grows and evolves into different expressions of its sunflowerness, and then it blossoms, and then it produces seeds. But the seeds aren't for that sunflower. They're for the world around us. They're for future sunflowers. I think all of us are meant to have the resources we need to grow and prosper into whatever plant we're meant to be, because then we can be food and resource and seed for others. And that's the cycle of abundance. That's what I
Yes.
think. That's the butterfly version of humanity.
Yeah. And it's great because it actually brings up the other piece as to, okay, let's just say we're imaginal selves.
Mhm.
I like that analogy. I like that thinking. And the people who are listening here and that will watch this later, I'm going to invite you to take the case that you're imaginal selves. And there was something you were sharing earlier with me today. It comes from one of our shared heroes, Bucky Fuller. And he
Mhm.
talked about the four beds of how I'm referring to it as the four beds of humanity. So I would love it if you would uh, briefly share Bucky's Four Beds
Sure.
and how
Sure.
it connects to what you were just sharing.
I would love to. I think it's been coming back because of the times we're living in right now. But imagine four beds side by side, kind of like a hospital infirmary or something like that. And Bucky Fuller said there were four types of people in the world. Bed number one are people who are out cold, fast asleep, not moving. Bed number two are people who are asleep, but it's a little restless. They may turn a little bit, but they're still asleep. Bed number three are the people who are just starting to wake up and stretch and open their eyes and see what's going on and wondering if they want to get up now. And bed number four are the people, the bed's made and the people are already out and about getting things done. And Bucky said that one of the greatest mistakes, the movers and shakers, the ones who want to change the world and want to go out and do things and get things done, one of the biggest mistakes they make is they try and go to bed number one and bed number two and get the people who are asleep to wake up. He said that's wasted effort, that's wasted energy. Even if you do get them to wake up, they're not going to want to join you because they're going to be too mad at you because you woke them up. Right? He said what
Right.
we need to do, if the imaginal cells are like the people who are out there making things happen, the bed's already made, we got to go to the people who are just starting to wake up and get them to come along and invite them to come along and activate their imagination of what's possible and get them to get out of bed and join us. And if you just focus your attention on those who are starting to wake up, who are starting to wonder, who are starting to question, who are starting to imagine, who are starting to ask, is this what I'm supposed to do with my life, whatever it is, you just focus on them. That's going to get what you called a mass, enough imaginal cells coming together that it's going to become a powerful force that then it's going to start to gradually wake up the other people as well.
Yeah. There'll be so many people partying there in that hospital room, making things happen
Yep.
that they're starting to wake up. And I have to say, one of the reasons I love being here in Substack, it's the unabashed, unsolicited endorsement, is because I really do feel this is a community of both imaginal selves and people awakening and waking up and ready
Yep.
to become their own imaginal selves as well.
Yep.
So, and it's not like you can't find that anywhere else. I'm not saying that, but I know this place is one of the places that seems to be attracting uh, both of those groups of people itself. So we're going to complete now, but I also want to invite you again. If you're first off, if you were here and you stayed here for the whole thing live, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
So great that you provided your listening the way you did. And if you have any questions, please post them in the comment section. I'm still learning how to use this live feature itself. So maybe next time I should start by saying, if you have questions as we go along, ask them. I did it this time, so it's too late now for that. But also, if you're also watching this, recorded, and we'll probably put it out, I'll probably put it on, on YouTube and who knows where. But if you do see it, please comment, what really struck you, what resonated with you, what if you have yeah, but how about this or how about that, please post that. We are really both, Teresa and I are committed to forwarding and continuing this as a conversation as we all are in the process of awakening to really what's possible. So, any what last comments would you like to share by way of completion, Teresa?
I guess it would just be this piece. Remember that all you have is gift, and remember most of all that you are gift. Now, what are you going to do with that gift today?
Good, very good. And let people know. Say they wanted to get in touch, find out more about your work itself. What would be the simplest way to go about doing that?
Well, I now officially have a Substack account, so sometime in the near future, I might actually start to show up here more regularly. Right now, the three places you can find me the most social media is Facebook, Teresa.Romain, I think is it. I have a YouTube channel, and my website is teresaromain.com. Two things to know about that: I do not have an H in my name. I got the H knocked out of me a long time ago. If you put an H in it, you're going to go to a website of a romance fiction author, and that is definitely not me. So, so just remember, no H in Teresa, and those are the three best ways to reach me. And again, perhaps on Substack very, very soon.
Yes, great. Yeah. So, I would love to have, Teresa be more active on Substack. So if you see this, send her a comment, through Substack, kind of let's nudge her along just a little bit more towards that itself.
I'm a
Okay.
responder. So if people ask me to show up someplace, I'll be there. But if they don't, I'm just not going to go.
Very good. I so love this conversation. We may have to do this again in the near future self, but in the meantime, I'm going to try to figure out how do we now end the conversation. A little bit more technology, challenge itself. But again, thank you, Teresa. Thank you for those of you who attended. Take
Yep.
care.
All righty. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye bye.